Well, hey everybody, I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to As Above, So Below, a rune and tarot divination for Thursday, the, ninth day of February, 2023. Well, I got through the whole thing, and I started listening to it, and it was jumping all over the place. I couldn't get it to stop, and it was weird because I decided to just restart the computer, reboot the computer. Only I did that, and it actually, even prior to doing that, I closed out the video window because I was listening to the video, and I closed that out, but it didn't close out. The window did, but my voice didn't, and it was playing even though it wasn't up on the screen. So clearly something went a little nutty with the computer. So I restarted it, and so far the video seems fine as I'm doing this, because I can kind of tell when things are a little jumpy, but at no time did it do the things that I was seeing in the finished product. So hopefully we're fine here. But I'm not going to change the runes or the cards that I have. I'm just going to work with what I originally had here. So I don't know. It's already in my head, and there's really no reason to change it. I think it was kind of an interesting reading anyway. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at today's esoteric forecast for the 9th. Although you may be tempted to go it alone today, working with others may be your best option. You may also need to reassess how you see yourself in relation to the group, especially when that involves what you and other members have to contribute. Be generous with your time and expertise, but be willing to accept the same from others. The shared success that results will positively impact future endeavors. Now, I didn't even get a chance to even relook at that. I didn't because I don't know why I didn't, but usually I try to hook the two things together, the reading and the esoteric forecast for today. And I just realized as I was rereading it here to you guys, it really does dovetail together. The runes I drew were Birkenau and Fortuna Major, and Birkenau represents the birch tree. It's thought to be the mother rune or earth mother rune. It's an earthy rune. It's about family. It's about bringing something to fruition. So it might be the birth of a child, for example, or it could be the finishing up a project that you have. The cards themselves had an overall numerology of 9, so that's endings and completion. Also spirituality and generosity. So there could be some end to a situation here involving the family and how you see, with Fortuna Major's greater fortune, how you view your fortune within that. Are you just thinking about, and I read this thing from the standpoint of material security versus emotional security. Are you and the battle of wills that could happen amidst something like that. Maybe that's what this is about. And but anyway, with Fortuna Major, again, that's greater fortune versus Fortuna Minor. This is the rune. I guess I better show you. This is Fortuna Major. Fortuna Minor is like this. Fortuna Major is this way. So this is the windfall. This is the outcome. This is the paycheck at the end of the process. The big bank account at the end or what have you, versus Fortuna Minor would be the progressive success, that you would have. But with Birkenau, you're as the mother rune, you're looking at protection, and again, family and new beginnings. So maybe there needs to be a little bit different view of what family is for you. And how you manifest your own, or the other, how your partner does. How does that play out? Are you so focused on work and earning the paycheck that you forget you have to have time for family as well? I mean, that's been a thing forever. Growing up, and I'm an old lady now, so it's not like this is a new thing, right? you had, the 50s, you had the 50s parenting where, dad played one role, mom played a different role, and the kids were probably more attached to mom than with dad. Dad would come home, but dad would have to have his time, and, because he's tired from working, being the breadwinner and all that. But then, of course, things started to change in our culture where moms were working as well. And if you were a single parent and the mother who had the kids, then, you had to do what you had to do, right? And sometimes the kids get lost along the way, and maybe nobody means for that to happen, but it can happen, especially when you're the only person bringing in the money, and maybe the other parent is just completely out of the picture. Maybe they died, or maybe they're just gone, and there's nobody helping you. And so maybe mom has to work 2 jobs, and so the kids are sometimes left on their own. Because let's face it, childcare these days costs, it takes one parent's whole paycheck just to have childcare. I know, because my youngest son and his wife were dealing with that at one point, where literally she had to work in order to support the daycare, and now she doesn't. She stays at home with the kids, and my son, well, he doesn't have to go back into he's a tech guy, so he can work at home. And so he doesn't have to go back into the business to do that. And COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of people, and that was one of the things that changed there. There are some that go into the office, but most of them don't. They work out of the house. And this just seems to work better for people, especially if you have got young kids. And they have 3 now, so, it's nice that dad's at least in the house if something happens, He's in the basement working, but he's there, he comes up for lunch and whatnot, So how families structure themselves has changed, but it doesn't mean that there can't be ways to improve the relationship at home, right? And to make the kids feel more secure, if that's in fact, the situation that this is talking about. I played around with moving the cards around a little bit, but and I think I'm going to go ahead and start with what I ultimately said. Okay. I actually had pulled the 9 of Wands first, then the 5 of Cups, and then the 4 of Pentacles, but I'm going to do them in reverse here, because that's ultimately, I think, the way I think you can tell the story better of this. Here we have an authority figure, in this case a king, and I'll tell you in advance, one thing the 3 cards share are some kind of line of demarcation, where here you've got one thing going on and here you've got another thing going on. So so you can think of that as that was then, this is now, or maybe you can think of that as showing a little bit of a disconnect. You can look at the king here in a variety of ways. He's holding fast to his money. Now, maybe that's on behalf of the kingdom, but maybe it's not. So in the case of Birkenau, maybe it's, if this is an authority figure in the family, a parent in the family, maybe they're very, very focused on their work. Maybe they're focused on earning the money to the expense of the kingdom. I mean, they may think it's for the kingdom, for the family, but in truth, there's kind of been an imbalance that's been created, where it's work, and oh yeah, that's right, I got to go home to the family. Maybe you come home really late, the kids are already in bed, they've already had their dinner, and that other parent isn't there. Right? And so there's this feeling of this, especially when you see the other cards, you'll understand where I'm kind of going with this, I think. 4 is about structures, about foundation, again, family, material security. And so he's definitely got at least his own. But what it's doing, I mean, the kingdom looks pretty good in the background, but, is he out there, professing to the world, hey, I've got the resources here to protect my kingdom, to protect my family. I've got the resources to do that. But there's no integration between him and the kingdom behind him. That's the part that I guess I'm worried about. And when you've got a family concerned, is one parent, one person spending way too much time at work when they need to kind of find a better balance. Sometimes people do that, and if they're not the boss, if they're not the business owner, they might be looking at, some of their employees that don't ever seem to leave. It's like, well, go home, go be with your family. Well, no, I got more to do. No, you can leave that for another day. Sometimes it takes, that to happen before the person starts to realize, hey, I've gotten a bit of an imbalance and I'm forgetting about the people I'm actually doing this for, right? That they need me just as much as they need the money that's coming in. I think the cold that my husband has been struggling with finally hit me. We were with the grandkids. They had some runny noses, and well, I don't know. One of them fed Grandpa oatmeal off his spoon, and what are you going to do? He's 3. You have to take the oatmeal. You can't devastate him. You can't make him feel bad. It's a game. He loves it. Let's feed Grandpa. It's like when he goes and puts Grandpa's shoes on and walks around the house. He's pretending to be Grandpa. It's a thing they do. So it's not like my husband could say no, and because we love him. I mean, unfortunately, we thought we were out of the woods, so nothing was going to happen, but then it did. And now I have it. So forgive the the coughing and the throat issues. I haven't taken any tinctures yet this morning. So anyway, so we have this issue then of is there a disconnect between the breadwinner and the family? And how do we view fortune? How do we view our greater fortune? Is it really the relationships that we build within that family, irrespective of the financial situation? Or are you just focused on the finances? Excuse me. Well, here we have some loss, some grief. And I think, there may be a realization on the part of the king, the authority figure, the breadwinner, the person working, maybe, I don't know, that not everybody's happy there in the home. And maybe he's got to look at himself a little bit and say, well, maybe I need to rethink some things. Maybe there needs to be a change. 5 is not just about protection and innovation and variety and all that good stuff and freedom versus restriction. It's about change. And so maybe a change needs to happen. Because clearly something has happened in the family. And maybe there's even more of a disconnect where maybe the kids aren't even, they're done with dad or they're done with mom or whatever your family structure is. 2 moms, 2 dads, whatever. It doesn't matter. But the one parent, we'll just say that, maybe they don't even try to interact with them. Maybe the interaction's all with the other one. And so maybe there's some grief involved, and some realization has happened. You do see some emotional awareness here with the cups up right here, but these things, the 3 here, they're just turned over, right? They're turned over and the contents are spilled out, and it's emotional, It also could represent the change that needs to happen. It could represent the family itself, where the family is just in disarray because one parent figure just is not there enough, or when the parent is there, maybe they brought work home and they've got to work some more. And so, it could be simply a function of the situation, but at some point there has to be some emotional healing there where you can realize, and realization where you realize that that I have other responsibilities, not just to my job, but to my family as well. And again, is that part of my greater fortune? To where I can see that, yes, I have to work diligently so I can bring the paycheck home, and because we have to pay the rent, we have to pay the house payment, we have to pay the car payment, got to have food, clothes, whatever, right? Got to pay the power bill, got to pay the phone bill. God help us, we got to pay the cable and internet bill. But I still have to have time for my loved ones. I still have to have time for my partner, my spouse. I have to have time for my children. So that the emotional needs of the family structure are met, right? So maybe you have a conversation about that. And you let everybody voice their opinions, say how they feel. And whereas it might be hard to hear it, you have to hear it. And then there has to be an agreement on the part of everybody that we're going to revisit this because some behavior has formed, and behavior is behavior, and you can't just overnight change that. It's very rare that, one day I can say, oh, well, I'll never do that again, but then you do, and it's like, oh, geez. So everybody has to understand that this is going to be a process, but that the individual in question that needs to make some changes is willing to do so. And so maybe you have family meeting once a week. Say, how'd we do this week? Did everybody feel supported? Who didn't? The little guy goes, Well, you spend more time with them than you did with me. So maybe you realize that, you go, oh yeah, you're right, I did, so I'm going to work on that this week, right? But be prepared for this. Maybe you've come to the agreement that, yeah, some changes need to be made. I need to have a little bit different focus in terms of the family, and I need to remember that I have one and that I have to give attention to that family. So there's an uneasy truce, right? Everybody's sitting there waiting to see, well, okay, is he really going to change? Is she really going to change? Are things around the house really going to change? And so that's where, you feel the support there. Everybody wants the same thing. But the person here, who maybe this person, who's having to maybe rebalance their life a little bit, or a lot, whatever. He's been through it. It's been a battle. He's probably a little bit, bereft himself. You can see he's got the bandage head here. And he's looking back there, and he sees all of the staffs behind him, and typically I read this as support. And with 9, that being the 9 of wands here, you're looking at wands as the will. It's the fire element. So how much will do you have to bring an end to something? 9, again, is about endings. Bringing some endings and completion. So you've defined the problem, you've agreed to work on it, but you're still going to have some issues of trust that you have to rebuild. Are we just going to change for the next month and then it's going to be business as usual? Because trust me, your children are going to know that. Your partner, your spouse is going to know that, but particularly your kids are going to know that. So I'm wondering if what this reading is really about is, maybe this will resonate for some people who are simply having issues of balance in their life, where maybe you've got the work part down, you're bringing in enough money, and it's not a situation where you're a single parent and you don't have any support coming in, and you're trying to work 2 jobs to support the kids you have. That's a little bit different situation. Because trust me, if it's mom doing that, mom is going to be very, very aware of the emotional support that her kids are not getting from her, and she will make an effort to do that, no matter how minimal it is. But sometimes circumstances are what they are. And sometimes kids are left to grow up either with babysitters, or if you can't have that, if you've got one kid that's old enough to watch them, then you've got a whole other family dynamic working there. And there's not a whole lot you can do about that other than to try to take whatever moment you can to, be there for your children. And there may not be very much time there, right? Maybe it's taking them to school in the morning, assuming you're there. You've not already left for work. So I realize that this is not going to really apply to some circumstances here, family circumstances, because, the situation is what it is. And everyone's doing the best they can and just trying to keep the lights on and the food on the table, and, so that's not necessarily, describing that situation, but where you do have a situation where, the family is intact and there's money coming in and all of that, sometimes you'll get one parent that just gives too much time to work. They're workaholics. I mean, we've all known people like that. That's just what they do. Well, it doesn't have to be. Even they need the emotional nourishment that family can give them. And they forget that. They're so focused on that they forget that there's people there that they're doing it for, who's not getting enough time. In the first attempt at this video, I shared a story of my youngest son who has our grandkids. They're the ones that gave us grandkids, and they with him at home, he can come up from the basement after doing his work. He's a computer design engineer. He's really very good, but he has to come up and he has to have lunch and whatever, spend a few moments, take a break, come spend a little time with the kids. The middle child was having some medical tests done, and he was with him. And when they got home, we were there because we were helping take care of the other two kids. One of them's a baby, and he just turned a year this last month. And oh, what the little man he is now. He's just adorable. I mean, they changed so much in that time, right? But my son comes home. I'm sitting on the couch and he grabs the baby and sits down next to me, and he's making the baby laugh. He's playing with them. He's just loving on him, and it was to watch my youngest son do that. My oldest son has an amazing he interacts with kids in an amazing way too. He's just, I don't know, they connect with children in a way that's really cool to see. Their dad was that way with them, and so it's just cool to see who they are as adults. And I know when my older son comes over to their house and hangs out with the kids just love him. I mean, they're all over him, you know. And the interaction he has with them is just so special. So to watch the two of them interacting with these children is amazing. And I just sat there and watched, you know, the way he interacted with his new child, basically. I think he was maybe about 8 months old at that time, and to watch that relationship between the two of them and the love that they have for one another, it's just the kid lights up, you know. My grandson lights up when he sees his dad and his mom too. All he has to do is hear his mom's voice, and it's like, where's mom, you know. So they're so connected with those kids, and it's so cool to watch this and the commitment that the family has together. And so it's their greater fortune is that, you know, because if you don't have that nourishment, that sustenance, how can you, I mean, it's easy to get off track and to get a lack of balance. You get so focused on the job that you forget who you're doing it for. And so I think with Birkenau, you know, there can be a new beginning if there's issues that way in your family, and you know, and there can be, you know, where maybe the kids don't see one parent enough, don't have as much interaction as they'd like to have. Find ways to do that and understand that, you know, the greater fortune, you know, there's fortune and greater fortune. And so maybe the fortune is the job you have, you know, brings in the money, but the greater fortune is what it can do to help provide material security for your family so that you can then also, you know, interact with them on a way that's loving and supportive, and you're building something together, you know. And again, it really involves, how are you approaching the financial side of life, you know, and how you, and then how you then view that, you know. It's it has to be a means to an end, with the end being the family structure and elevating that family in a way that involves commitment and love and caring and support, and it's the interaction that you have, you know, the relationship that you have, the preservation of that. I think that keeps the grief out of the mix. And the lack of trust. It's like, well, is it really over? I mean, are we really going to move in a different direction? You know? So, again, you know, with 9, also the overall numerology of the cards being 9, you know, maybe we're talking about an end to that imbalance. But then again, if you're looking at the 9 from the standpoint of generosity and spirituality, you know, maybe you're understanding the real meaning of the 9, you know, the universality of the 9, the completion, coming full circle, and having an understanding where you put that family first, and understand that the job and the other stuff that you have to do to create the material security is a means to an end, with the end being the family itself. So that seems to me what the overall message of the reading is for today. Again, you know, it could also be that there's issues with finances that have maybe impacted trust, and And there's a lot of grief involved. That could be another way to read this. And the security of the family unit is in question. You could also look at it this way. If there's any deception going on with one partner, then you could have a family situation where, nobody really knows what's going on, and the family's fragmented, and nobody's getting what they need, and all of that. And so the kids don't trust the situation, and they don't feel secure, and all of that. So you could also read it that way. And again, it comes down to Berkano and Fortuna Major. Where is your greatest fortune? Is it family, or is it, the material side of things? Are you willing to even support the family materially? That you could look at this in a variety of different ways. If you look at the king here as a miser, maybe I used to know parents that leave their kids at home and they go off playing. They'd spend their nights in the bar, or they'd be out playing somewhere, and they don't have their kids with them. And the kids are just expected to fend for themselves. And, you could look at the four that way, the Four of Pentacles that way, where the authority figures in the equation are just, it's all about them. It's not about, anybody else. And the family suffers for it. The family unit suffers for that. They don't see it. They don't care. I just would be sitting there going, you've got to be kidding me. But, you don't say anything because it's not your business. But it's an interesting thing to watch, and they defend their position in ways that are so ridiculous, and as if there's any defense at all for it. You chose to have children. Go be their parents, So this reading could have something to do with that, But it just seems like, with the Nine of Wands, there's an element of mistrust where it's a battle of wills. I want this and you want that. And we're not gonna bridge that divide, and you kind of see the bridge to that divide here, between the home and whatever's happening. Maybe he got tossed out because he was doing things he shouldn't have been doing. I don't know. It could be something like that, and now he's realizing, hey, I screwed up, and I made a mess of things, and I'm very sad about it, and I don't know what to do to fix it. It could be something like that. But I think that, to me, out of all of this, the real key card is this one, is trust. This guy's been through a battle. He looks behind and sees the support that's there, sees what's left, or it could be the people he was battling with and he's won maybe, but what has he won? But I tend to look at it differently. I tend to look at it as this is the support he has behind him. But is the support really there? Can he really trust it? Because he's been through the ringer, basically. He's been through a battle. You can see that with the bandage on his head. Now he's successful, the battle's over, but maybe the battle's just begun. Maybe it's just the initial phase of it. And the real battle is in trying to fix the situation at hand so that the mistrust goes away. So you can trust the support that you have around you. But if that's, the family, if the wands or the staffs behind him, this is the Nine of Wands, if the staffs behind him are representing the family, who's sitting there waiting for this guy to get it together, maybe he's the source of the mistrust. So again, it just depends on how these cards fit together and how they and the details they give over, regarding the significators of the runes, the Berkano and in this case Berkano and Fortuna Major. But I think that they're interesting paired together because how do you manifest family? Is it all about the money that's coming in, or is it about the relationships you build and sustain and nourish along the way? I mean, when you have children, you have to do that. You have to do that for them. You have to provide that strength, that support, that grounding, that foundation, that legacy. Otherwise, the family scatters when they have a chance. The kids grow up, they're gone. You don't see them. So, and we all try to do the best, but maybe we're not really sure what that is. So it takes that interaction between the family members, the being able to have a child say to you, Mom, I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't feel comfortable with what you're doing. Or Dad, I need you to be home more. I need you, when you get off work, don't go to the bar. Come home. Come home to me. Come home and see me. A parent having to hear something like that from their child, they have to be open to doing that, and it crushes you, but at the same time, to hear your child say, I'm not getting what I need from you, but if the family structure is intact, that ought to be able to happen. It ought to be able you ought to be able to listen to what they have to say, take it to heart, and make the changes that they need for you to make. Because in the long run, what happens is your own spirit is nourished by this whole experience. To find your nourishment only at work, well, there's a problem. To where you stay there to all hours of the day and night, there's a problem. Because very likely that doesn't have to happen. And again, in cases where it does, well, that's a different story. That's a different dynamic that's having to happen for the family. And again, keeping the dialogue open, try even just giving 5 minutes, before going in, when you get home, if they're already in bed, going in and if they're not asleep yet, just spending a few moments talking to the kids. It just means the world to them. It means that Daddy's thinking about them or Mama's thinking about them when they're at work, and they want to get home as soon as they can and talk to them. And that can make all the difference in the world. So again, what is your greater fortune in terms of family? Is it the material security that's coming in, the money that's coming in, or is it the family itself? So, at least my screen didn't jump all over the place, so hopefully this thing will actually play right when I listen to it, and it'll upload well. So anyhow, thanks for watching though, and have a wonderful weekend, and come back again on Monday for another edition of As Above, So Below, and click subscribe if you haven't. I'd love you to do that. And be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.